He turned water into wine, I turned whiskey into songs. Too many second chances, too many too far gones. Gave me grace along the way, took my heart and led me home. Don't you see, it's a God thing for me. Now I write songs about the heartland. My heartland's in Tennessee.
Welcome to the Heartland Journal podcast with Steve Abramowitz, editor-in-chief of heartlandjournal.com.
Howdy, y'all. Welcome back. I'm Steve Abramowitz, and this is the Heartland Journal podcast. On this show, we are focusing on our nation today with always an interesting person. I keep finding them. It's quite amazing, that make a positive change in our community and are lovers of truth. Today, we are talking with special guest Jeff Putnam. You've heard of Jeff Putnam. Jeff Putnam writes adventure the way it was meant to be. Raw, relentless, and packed with high-stakes action. His stories aren't about invincible superheroes or chosen ones with destinies on their side. They're about men like Cole Harper, flawed, cunning, and forced to fight their way out of impossible situations with nothing but grit, wits, and a well-worn 45. With a passion for storytelling, not a wimpy Glock 9, by the way. With a passion for storytelling, Jeff crafts narratives that transport readers to exciting worlds filled with mystery and danger, reminiscent of beloved franchises. He draws inspiration from iconic adventure films and literature, shaping his unique voice. With titles like The Last Nazi, An Ancient Map, A Lost Relic, A Race Against the Past, The Tomb of the Jaguar King, Cole Harper has survived war and a lifetime of bad decisions, but even he knows better than to go chasing lost treasure. And The Plague of the Pharaohs. The desert holds more than just shifting sand and buried ruins. Bum, bum, bum. Let's meet the author behind Cole Harper's books. This will be fun. Oh, Jeff, how are you today?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, thanks for coming. This is exciting for me. Big fan, big fan. So let's just start at the beginning. Catholic, blue-collar worker, editor, and dad of 9. How do you do it all? Not the
I
nine,
drink
not
a
the
lot of
9 kids
coffee.
part. I know that part, but
That's just simply something in the water. Now, I drink a lot of coffee. I'll tell you that.
they do say it's good for that. Okay, well, seriously, you got 9 kids running around. You're doing your day job. How do you become such a prolific writer with all that going
Oh,
on?
well, the 9 kids part, they're stretched out. The oldest one's 27 and the youngest is 11. So I've only got 3 that are under 18 right now.
Okay, well, I had a hard time doing it with 2, so God bless you and your family. Um, Well, you're probably going to have 18 grandkids one of these days in
I'm hoping more
2022.
than that.
Yeah, well, at least minimum. It'd still be above average for an American. And speaking of Americans, in 2022, average reading scores were lower for both fourth and eighth grade students compared to 2019. Scores were lower by 3 points at both grades for both boys and girls. How do you feel about another generation of Americans that can't even read your books or even your X posts unless it's a TikTok video?
Well, it's just, I guess we get to go back and thank GW for that and the whole No Child Left Behind, right?
All children
It
left
doesn't
behind, yeah.
matter if they can't read. It doesn't matter if they can't write. It doesn't matter if they can't do basic mathematics. We can't hold them back because it makes them feel bad. Let's pass them.
Yeah, yeah. Well, long way from the rulers. Did you go to Catholic school?
I did not. I wasn't even Catholic until 2023.
Okay, wow, that's a big extreme. So there is a trend for young men to move towards the Catholic Church versus, say, the Evangelical Church or Judaism or Buddhism. What prompted you to go there?
Well, now I'm flattered because you said I was young. So that makes me feel a lot better. Like my oldest kid's 27. I feel great.
Anyone younger than Robert Duvall, who passed away last month, is young in my opinion. So
Oh man, he was a great too. No, my wife was born and raised Catholic, and I was born here in the South. I'm in South Carolina, so Southern Baptist, and then I was really nothing, agnostic, pagan, whatever for 30 years. And it actually started when I was helping a friend of mine ghostwrite his first book. And well, I was technically a ghostwriter slash editor slash co-writer. Not I didn't write it for him, but it was a book on what it means to be a man, um, as a Christian biblical man. And that involved me getting up at 5 a.m., getting on a Zoom call with him, uh, and because he's in Virginia. And then we would co-write and talk and discuss the themes that were going into the book. A lot of it was, him coming up as a young man, literally dirt floor poor. He had a dirt floor, living in a barn that was being converted into a house by his father. And so that involved a whole lot of me having to brush up on everything I learned in Sunday school. And that meant a lot of scripture reading, back and forth discussions with him. And I just started kind of feeling the pull towards church.
Mm.
And so I sat down and I prayed for the first time in 30 years and said, I don't know if you can hear me, but I feel like I'm supposed to be doing something like this right now. So give me a sign. And that was the entirety of the prayer, pretty much.
Mm.
And 2 weeks later, I told my family, I said, hey, we're all going to go to mass. And we drove to one of the Catholic churches down here and never stopped going.
How many of the 9 kids did you have at that point? 7 or 2?
Oh, let's see. Just 4 in the house at the time.
4 in the house. Okay. All right. Everyone go along with this, or they chafe?
Uh, one chafed, one kind of on the journey still, half in, half out.
Hmm. The
But
scenic
everybody
route
else
to
is on
heaven.
board.
The scenic route to
Yeah.
religion. Yeah.
I mean, look, I was a lost sheep for 30 something years. It's not like,
Me
I can say
too.
anything to anyone.
51 years for me. What is your favorite Cole Harper book, and why do you love about him, Cole, as a character and role model to young men?
I absolutely do not think this is going to be funny. I do not think Cole Harper should be a role model to young men.
Oh, okay.
He's not. I mean, he's a smuggler, right?
Yeah.
That's the whole
So was
premise of
Rhett
the book.
Butler, and look what he did to a generation.
True. But no, the idea for Cole Harper came from me binge watching the only 3 Indiana Jones movies in existence, because the other ones don't count, out of boredom one weekend. And I kept thinking, why don't they write more movies like these? Fun adventure without any kind of weird moralizing, or there's a lesson in there, subliminal kind of context to any of the films, which it's impossible to watch one now without it. You've got to have that one comment,
It's because they
from
did
some.
Alan Quartermain and the Treasures of Gold, and they blew it. So that was the end of that.
Yeah, Alan Quartermain is great. I love Solomon's Mines,
Or
but
Gunga Din, right? I mean, Gunga Din before that even.
Gunga Din, right? But I just wanted a fun story that didn't have any moral lessons to it. I mean, look at Die Hard, one of the greatest Christmas movies ever made. So
Yeah.
now you know where I stand on that topic.
Casablanca.
It is a Christmas movie, but Die Hard doesn't have any moralizing. It's just fun, narrative-driven adventure.
Yeah. Terrorism
I
bad.
mean,
Law and Order, NYPD good. That's it.
right. I mean, that was it. And not even that. He broke the rules. He was acting as a cop in a jurisdiction that wasn't his, and he was cussing out the chief of police.
Yeah.
He was just a guy doing what he had to do because the circumstances demanded it of him.
And he walked through
And that,
glass.
right, with no shoes on, and God bless his feet. But that's the kind of the idea that I wanted for a hero, very Clive Cussler, dirt pit uh, protagonist, that he is the everyman in a sense, because he wasn't some super secret soldier in World War II. He
Right.
flew cargo planes and then got kicked out of the army for smuggling
Love it.
things out
Yeah.
of Europe, which we can kind of all guess what those things he was smuggling out, right? Stolen art, da 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 da.
He's Humphrey Bogart, and Indiana Jones rolled into one. In my humble opinion, I mean, he's great.
Yeah, pretty
Dirt Pit
much.
was a good one too, but they blew that movie completely. Sahara. So here's an interesting question. I think Indiana Jones lost Best Picture in 1981 to Chariots of Fire. I crushed me. I was 10. Superhero movies have basically saved Hollywood the last decade at least, maybe more, which maybe didn't deserve saving, going, so woke since Clint and Burt and John Wayne and Indy before he married Ally McBeal in real life. So you wrote Mary Sue's are for women and adventures are for men. That's what you said. Explain where Hollywood went wrong.
They went wrong in following the idea that we've seen in our culture now that everything has to be content, not entertainment. Everything revolves around the world of social media right now. And everything has to get clicks, it has to get likes. You got to have those zingy little one-liners. I think one of the best anecdotes of today's age is look at the movie Avatar, James Cameron's billion-dollar movie franchise. There's nothing in it that you can quote.
Hmm.
It made billions of dollars, yet it had zero cultural significance. You think back to The Godfather, I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse,
Could have been
right?
a contender with
Casablanca, here's
waterfront.
looking at
Yeah.
you, kid. All of these things, they have a cultural impact on us. Avatar does not, because it's content.
Wow. That is
It's
true.
not entertainment. It is not storytelling. Everything has to be able to boil down. And really, Avatar is just the Pocahontas story retold in space.
Yeah. Or
And
video.
everybody
It's just
knows
a video game that you can sit through and not actually use the
it's
controllers
spectacle rather than story.
for
And
sure.
Michael Bay is everybody laughs at Michael Bay, but he's probably the only modern director that can mix spectacle and still have an entertaining story.
Shane Black. I'm a fan.
There you go.
Iron Man 3.
But that's where we went wrong with is trying to save everything with these fatiguing Marvel and superhero movies. DC does okay because they're darker, they're grittier, but then at the same time, they try to be too much like Marvel, which is all spectacle and witty one-liners with no substance.
Yeah. That's a great
And
point. Great point.
I wanted something that didn't have to be as deep, as I mean, we're not watching, Bridge of Spies, or we're not getting into, the deep art house nouveau riche movies where there's not really a point unless you're somehow brain dead to get it. I wanted entertainment with a straightforward story. And so I thought of Cole Harper, a guy he's an everyman. He just wants to be kind of left alone, make his money the best he knows can. He's got circumstances where he can't go back to America because if he does, he goes to prison. And so he makes a living doing the only thing he's good at, smuggling, flying planes.
And
And he gets,
that was the joy of Indy and Die Hard's McClane is that they could take a punch, they'd be bleeding outside the mouth, but yet
but
they
he gets
keep
pulled. He's
powering
in the
on.
wrong place at the wrong time. He's
Yeah.
in a bar in Cuba in book one, and this beautiful British woman walks up to him wanting to hire him. And the next thing you know, he's in a gunfight with Germans and he's jumping into the plane. And turns out she's MI6 and she needs his help.
They did that with James Bond one time, but they put him into a North Korean parasailing thing, and his hair was perfectly dry and coiffed as soon as he got on the beach. So they don't know how to do it like you do, sir. So okay, faith-based films, they've been on the rise. Maybe the new saviors
Mhm.
of Hollywood. Passion 2 coming next year from Mel Gibson. Mel comes from the old school, like Wayne and Mitchum, in my opinion. You're Catholic, he's Catholic. How does your religion shape your characters?
It really doesn't.
These are all
Mainly
atheists.
because, no, they're not. I mean, Cole is a lapsed Catholic, and there's nothing he does inside any of the stories, all five of them, even though book six is taking place at the Vatican. At least I think it's going to be book six. I don't know if I'm going to finish this one or jump onto a different one until I figure out how this one wants to go. But there's nothing he does in any of the books that are, well, this is morally right and this is what God wants me to do. He's being shot at, so he shoots back. There's a woman being, getting ready to get grabbed and kidnapped by these, thuggish German guys. So he starts beating the crap out of them in the bar and throwing them across the bar.
Mhm.
He just has a code, whether it's something ingrained into him as a man or that subconscious thing where I have to do something. I can't just sit here. I've got a gun on my side. I can't just let this happen.
Mhm.
and
So,
let the
so,
chips fall where they may.
so he's not
He gets pulled into
messianic like Superman. He is a everyman who finds himself in the wrong place at the right time, almost like a Lanny Bud, if you're familiar with those.
Yeah, and he's yes, and he's trying at every opportunity to ditch their responsibility. Like, I really don't want to be helping you right now, but these people are now shooting at me because I helped you one time, so I don't have a choice.
Yeah, I love it. So you mentioned that you write history books as well as adventure fiction. Is there a historical period or event you're dying to explore in a future Cole Harper adventure?
Oh, you ever seen those TV shows, Expedition Unknown with Josh Gates?
Yeah.
Most of my ideas for my books come from those episodes. I've
Oh,
watched every single episode of all 15 seasons. I've got one in the works right now that involves the Hanjo Masamune, the famed sort of the Tokugawas of Japanese lore that went missing in World War II. So
huh.
I take these real events that I find interesting from laying in my bed late at night when my wife fell asleep and I'm watching documentaries and just ask, what if? So in book three, The Plague of the Pharaohs, which is that one there,
Okay.
it involves a ancient plot between Julius Caesar and Cleopatra. Everyone knows they were getting it on, and everyone knows that she had a kid with Mark Antony, right? Well, what if there was an ancient form of biological warfare because Cleopatra hated Rome? What if she had discovered some plague, some virus, and she planned on unleashing it to Rome to destroy the empire? Because the Ptolemies were always at war with the Roman Empire as far as ideologically and who had control of what. So then I just ask, what if Julius Caesar, so smittenly in love with Cleopatra, found out about it, hid it so that it would never be discovered because he feared her being executed by the Roman Empire? And now here we are in 1951, 52, height of the Cold War, and some Soviets have discovered this old legend of a plague, and they want to go out into the desert, find it, and unleash it upon America. And Cole just happens to be there at a bar drinking when he gets pulled into it. So I always take real historical fact or legend and ask, what if? Now, if you're Catholic, you believe that the Holy Grail is sitting at a cathedral in Valencia, Spain. But Indiana Jones and Spielberg and Lucas, they asked, what if? What if it is in Petra? But they changed Petra and said, oh, it's the Temple of the Crescent Moon or whatever they called it, because it was at the end of the Crescent Moon Cavern or whatever it was. And there is a Templar Knight that's been preserved by everlasting life because he's guarding the Holy Grail. They took something real and said, what if? And that's all I do with mine. So anytime I get an idea, it's usually spur of the moment. And then I fill this whiteboard out right here and become obsessed with it until the book's done.
Mm.
So as far as a specific period of time, there's no way I could just narrow it down to one because I'm a history nerd. I love these obscure little stories. Book five involves the treasure of Oliver Levasseur, aka the Buzzard, one of the most famous pirates to ever be executed just on Reunion Island off of Madagascar. And so all these things are rooted in real world events, but I just ask what if, because we don't always know the full story of history. So it's fun to play
As
with
a
that.
true fiction writer should. I mean that's funny because I had Sean Patrick Flannery on here. He was the young Indiana Jones in the TV show The Chronicles, the young
Yeah,
Indy.
I love Sean
He,
Patrick Flannery.
he should play Cole, but that's for another day for up to you. But
See, there is a certain movie studio that I've been working with for about 6 to 8 months now that we have two producers. We're waiting on a yes or no from a screenwriter, and then we can take it to the director, we're hoping. And they want to turn Cole Harper into either a serialized TV show, kind of like how Reacher is, with one novel being one season, or three movies. And one of the people that we've looked at uh, to play Cole Harper, very popular right now. And just so I don't jinx it, I won't name him. He's on the cusp of being too old because Cole Harper's 29, 28 years old in the first book. But Sean would have been perfect.
I know his phone number. We can talk about it, but we'll get to that in a second. Do you enjoy blogging?
Yes and no. Sometimes it's a chore, which is why I don't do it nearly as regularly as I used to. And sometimes like every writer, you have to get it out. So you just start writing it all down.
Yeah. Does it just flow like that? I mean, I was reading that you watched what was it? Documentary on old pirate legends just for fun, and then you heard that name, Olivier Levasseur, and all of a sudden, did it just flow? The buzzard?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sitting there, I'm watching Josh Gates and went, that's a great idea for a book. So at 1 o'clock in the morning, I fly out of my bed and I come running in here and start writing things down on the whiteboard. My wife's waking up. What is wrong? Don't worry about it. Go back to bed. I'm fine.
So Cole is described as an ex-army pilot and smuggler, as you said, who takes on dangerous jobs. Okay, merchant. What inspired you to create this particular character, and how did you decide on his backstory and personality? And is he going to have a Marion? Do you have some woman from history that's going to
There
end up
is a
being?
Marion.
I'm sorry?
There is a
There is a
Marion.
Marion.
Yep, her name is Catalina. She's an old flame, and she's a facilitator, like a broker between clients and other smugglers. And that's how she and Cole had a tryst in the past, and now there's a lot of tension between them in just about every one of the books.
Ah, okay. There you go. So you describe your books almost like Jack and Annie, but adult. You describe your books as bringing the spirit, and I'm quoting you, the spirit of classic adventure fiction from the 30s and 40s roaring back to life. What specific authors or books from that era influence you, and how do you modernize that style to today's readers who, as we said, don't read?
The one that stuck with me the most out of anything was Buck Rogers.
Oh, yeah.
Buck Rogers was a swashbuckling, gallivanting adventure, but with lasers in space. And it was
Yeah,
very fantastical during the era of Buck Rogers. And you mix that with a little bit of Tintin, and that whole vibe just, man, it screams fun.
it does. And you get to
Yeah, like my
you get to
11-year-old
globetrot. You
son,
can go anywhere you want. You can go to
right?
San Moritz one
My
day
11-year-old
to
son has read every single Cole Harper novel, and he harps on me to finish the next one. He loves them. And that's another thing I wanted with my books. I didn't want something that, well, it's marketed to young adults, or it's marketed to children, or it's marketed to adults. You can be 5 years old, you can be 50 years old, and you're going to enjoy Indiana Jones. And that's what I wanted.
Yeah,
I didn't want something where there's, you know, R.R. Martin's sex every other page. The language is off the charts where basically it has an NC-17 rating just to read the first, few pages of the prologue. I didn't want any of that. I wanted something that's just fun.
yeah.
Indiana Jones cusses, you know, but he's not dropping F bombs and everything else every 2 seconds.
A lot of GDs, but yeah, if you're over 55, you want to be like Indiana Jones when you were younger, and if you were under 18, you want to be like him when you're older. I mean, he had that perfect
Yeah,
sweet
there's an
spot for
appeal to,
adventure.
to adventure for everyone.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted.
You got it. So with 5 books now in the series, how has Cole evolved as a character since the last Nazi, and where do you see him maybe heading in the future into his, Conan had they never did it, but the Conan the King, he was going to be the old man on the throne after all his adventures.
Well, one of the things that I struggled with early on, I think it was about the third or fourth book, was how am I going to handle the progression of time? Because there has to be a stop somewhere. If you look at Lee Child with his Reacher series, or even rest in peace Vince Flynn with the Mitch Rapp series, which is probably one of my favorites. Reacher is old. He's almost 60 years old in the books now. Mitch Rapp gets older. He starts off, if you look at American Assassin, which was the third book, I think, but it was a prequel to all of them. He's 18 years old. And by this latest one with the second uh, guy who's taken over since Vince Flynn passed away, he's 50s. And so he's a little slower. His knees are aching. But then you have these other series where it's just perpetual nonstop adventures and the guy never gets any older, like he's stuck in time.
Yeah. It's like Matt Damon
I
said
had to,
that what's the next one going to be called? The Bourne Redundancy. They kind of did everything they could with Bourne that wasn't a James
right.
Bond movie, and they're going on 50 of those.
Yeah. And he gets a lot older. And with James Bond, you had to constantly reinvent him just to keep him
Or
on
recast
screen
him. Just recast him.
or recast him.
That's so funny.
I liked, and most people will hate me for this. Since we're on this tangent, I liked Daniel Craig's arc from beginning to end as James Bond because it needs a linear story to follow. He needed to become James Bond. He gets his 00 status in the little black and white prelude of Casino Royale. And then he dies because that's the only two options you have, retire or die. And James Bond isn't a guy who retires.
Although
Right?
they tried many times and they kept bringing him back to retirement, like The Godfather 3.
Right. But he, just when I thought I was out, they pull me back in. Right. I can't
Literally.
do it like, oh gosh, Steve Van Zandt on The Sopranos. He was great
He did, yeah.
doing that.
You got to
Uh,
make your lower lip come out. But yeah, they literally pull him out of the river. He's hiding out eating scorpions or whatever he's doing to come out of retirement in that quadrillion, those four movies that you just mentioned. But yes, they
right.
did kill him at the end, which was like, wait a minute.
And so that's what I had to do with Cole Harper. I had to make him older. He's got miles on him. Now, granted, he's still only in his 30s, but jumping off of one building to land on another and then fall through the floor and hit a couple of crates and then continue to run in full sprint while getting shot at by people is starting to take a toll.
Yeah.
And so that's what I've done as far as the physical type of evolution that he's had.
Right. Which
As far
coincides with
as
the historical dates, so you can get past World War II. And it's something like in the fourth Indiana Jones, he puts himself in a refrigerator because of the nuclear blast in the 50s, something like that. Like they tried.
right, right. But with the first book taking place just after the end of World War II, and now we're worried about Soviets and communism and all these things with the Cold War really ramping up. That time progression has to take place. So Cole can't stay 29 forever. And so he also can't have the devil may care, well, not completely devil may care kind of attitude, but he's still very sardonic in his wit. And
Mhm.
he's still only in it for him. He's not in it for anybody else. But his relationship with Catalina grows throughout the series. And this could be something that, I don't know, I might kill her in the seventh book just to cause him spiral out of control. I don't know.
That's what they did with
But
James Bond's wife when the gal from Three's Company, they killed her off and he went on a rampage. Or you got Timothy Dalton replaced Rhett Butler, Clark Gable
but
in the
Timothy Dalton
sequel
only did
to,
one movie though.
but the sequel to Gone with the Wind. They wimped him up. They put the weakest, in my mind, of the James Bonds into the Rhett Butler role for the sequel to Gone with the Wind, which never should have been made. That's a whole nother thing.
Fair
So,
enough.
so you've
But he
managed.
but he does have to evolve. Things happen to him. He loses
Yes,
friends. He gets
yes.
betrayed.
He's not Bart Simpson
Um,
forever 8 years old. That's amazing.
right. He's not. But
More like Lanny Budd, actually, who goes all the way to
but
his
do we
deathbed.
really change all that much as we get older? We change in degrees, but we don't do 180s. Cole is always going to be Cole, right? John McClane got really old and he was always just John McClane. Even
It's
in the fifth one where, Jai Courtney played his son, that was just a fun little movie. Was it a great one? No, but it was fun. He's still a terrible dad. He's still a terrible husband.
He's stalking
He's
his
just
daughter at the
doing
time. He's looking at her
stalking
through the
his
dorm
daughter.
window. It's crazy.
Right. But he's still just look, I'm John McClane. This is what I do. I'm in the wrong place at the wrong time, and I've got a gun, and somebody has to do something. So that's what Cole Harper is.
He
He
was a
changes a
great,
little bit. He matures a little bit. Okay, I understand I can't stalk my daughter. I understand I have to let my son be his own man because he's just as thick and hard-headed as I am. And that's what's happening with Cole. He's staying the same, but some of the edges get rounded off a little.
I love it. He's like what Art Mullen said to Raylan Givens in the Elmore Leonard series, Justified. You know, you're a terrible marshal, but you're a great lawman. Same with John McClane. Terrible police officer, you're breaking all the rules, but man, do you like to fight for law
You
and
get the
justice?
job done.
So you managed to
Yeah.
release multiple Cole Harper books, rapid succession. What's your secret to maintaining such high productivity while keeping the quality?
Well, at the time I didn't have a job, so that was great. You know, um, when Hurricane Helene came through, it pretty much tore everything up down here. And I blew through all of my savings because when I sold my company uh, that I owned in 2022, I pretty much lived off that for several years. And when I spent 6 months having to repair damage to property and all this other, I said, well, I guess I need to go get a job. So I worked at a sawmill for a little while because I love blue collar, hard, get outside, sweat, feel miserable work, and recouped my savings, came back, continued writing because my daily routine was wake up, drink coffee, take the dog out, sit down and write until 5 a.m. or sorry, 5 p.m. That was my, I'll get up, go hang out with my wife, kids, go out to eat, do whatever we want to do, and then come back and sit down and write. But after doing that for a couple of years, I stayed bored,
Mm.
especially when you get into those writing ruts. You're like, ugh, can't quite figure this out. I need to go out and live for a little bit and just refill the tank for my creativity. And so I took this job that I'm at now. I'm a foreman for a foundation repair company. I spend a lot of time under houses
Mhm.
or in basements doing remodels or waterproofing, picking up houses that are crumbling. But when I go to write, I lock in and I don't let myself leave the room until I've accomplished whatever the word count that I wanted for the day is. But with the first 5 Cole Harper books, I would finish one and send it off to have an editor run through it while I was writing the second one.
Mhm. They were flowing.
I mean, I wrote my first book. It was a nonfiction in 2021. It's called Empire Divided, a modern man's guide back to his tribe. I wrote that in 31 days for the simple fact that I sat down on my front porch with a cup of coffee and my pipe, and I said, I'm going to write 1,000 words every single morning. And the average book is 35 to 45,000 words. I'm not going to get up from this spot until that minimum 1,000 words is done. I'm not going to stop hard at 1,000 words if I've got more to say. So some days I would sit down and it would take me 4 hours to write 1,000 words. And then some days I would have 3,000 words in, an hour and a half. But every single day I had that bare minimum until I felt like the book was done. And
Wasn't
that's
it
what I do with,
Hemingway that did 100 a day, something like that? He had a rule like this too.
yeah, but even though he was my original inspiration for being a writer, I don't think he's the exact model people want to follow.
Yeah, well, especially the ending. Yeah.
Yeah, the ending was rough,
But in
and I
terms
don't
of
want
his
to
method of,
write
I think it was 100 a day, or you can't do anything else. That was like, if he hadn't have
right,
done
but
that,
I
he
don't
wouldn't
want
have
to.
anything
I
else.
also don't want to write 47 endings like he did for Whom the Bell Tolls.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that either. But he was my original inspiration for being a writer because I had to do a book report on him in high school, and I just saw one picture online at the public library of him drunk on a sailboat with a machine gun hunting sharks. And I was like, if this is what a writer does,
Yeah.
it sounds like the life for me. I want to get drunk on sailboats and hunt sharks with machine guns.
You and Hunter S. Thompson, only he did it in magazines. You're doing it in novels, although he wrote some novels. So I like to read 5-star reviews to authors when I get them on here and get their reaction. Never 4, 3, 2, or 1, but so folks that likes you, like Mike C, who said Putnam masterfully blends ancient ruins, cryptic legends, and ruthless gunmen into a tale that feels like a classic adventure yet wholly original. A fresh cast of unpredictable characters keeps you guessing, friend or foe. while heart-pounding moments like Cole decoding a hieroglyphic trap under gunfire showcase his daring and wits. If the jungle setting occasionally feels relentless, it only amps up the stakes. What would you say to Mike if you met him, and how do you keep it wholly original? We went through a long list of like repetitive, redundant movies that do this, save the world over and over again. How do you keep it fresh?
Well, first I would thank Mike and I'd give him a hug and I'd buy him a beer. I love hearing that people like my books. You know, I wanted people that I did not know to read them first because, they might smile at your face. Well, it's your best friend. Of course, he's going to tell you your book is good. Um, but as far as keeping it original, it's because I always just ask, what's the worst thing that could happen right now to Cole in whatever situation he's in? And I'll tell you what, I'm not a really good writer because I can't tell a B plot where it switches the perspective to a different character, and then you have to come back to whatever's happening with your main protagonist. I don't do that. All of the books are from Cole's limited third person or first person perspective, right? It's a third person. Sorry, it's Cole did this, and then he went here, and then he went here. Whatever's going on in the background, you don't know. It's only what's visible through his eyes.
That's the way
And so,
the Dashiell Hammett film noir such did with
yeah,
narration and everything. That
yeah,
is, did you take inspiration from those guys?
I
The
did not.
Pulp Fiction? No, okay.
No, I did not. I just knew that I had limitations. And so I tried to
Man's got to
stay in
know
my
his
lane.
limitations. That's what Clint
I
said.
tried to stay in my lane. But I always ask, what's the worst thing that could happen right now that would make everything worse for Cole, where he's like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, why did this happen? And that's what I do next.
A
Oh,
little,
great.
little bit
We
of
are,
Job in there from the Bible.
yeah, we got stuck in this chamber in the middle of the Amazon jungle and we're going to die. Oh, great. I found a way out. Oh, well, because I found a way out, the floor gave way over here and I dropped the MacGuffin and the bad guys got it.
Snakes. Why did it
Yeah,
have to be snakes?
right. Please just call it a rope. But that's what I do. I think of what's the worst thing that could happen. And sometimes you're watching a movie and you start feeling that level of suspense and you're like, oh man, are they gonna make it? They're almost there to the finish line. They're almost out of danger. And then something bad happens and it throws them off onto another tangent where they're not out of the woods yet. I just do that with Cole the entire book.
Poor guy. So you
Yeah.
mentioned ghostwriting 73 books while building your own author brand. How did you transition from writing for others to putting your own name on the cover? And was that transition hard?
It wasn't really hard to make the transition because I've written fiction for other people before. And they usually come to me with varying degrees of information. Some of them say, I want a girl who just broke up with her boyfriend. She's working on one of those luxury yachts as a server, kind of like that Life Below Deck TV series. And she gets stranded in Italy and meets a handsome local who turns out to be a rich guy. Okay, great. I'll just watch 3 Hallmark movies and I can write your book. That's really all I got to do. Or I've had people come in and say, I want a cyberpunk dystopian kind of uh, narrative driven story with this, and this element. Okay, I'm going to go watch The Fifth Element and I'm going to, watch Blade Runner twice.
Or that one
And then
with
I
the
can kind of
girl
get that.
spider something.
Yeah. And I can get that whole vibe thing going. And sometimes they come in and say, I want this, this, this. These are the list of the characters. These are who they are. This is why they are. And this is what I want from happen to beginning to end. And so I've had a lot of practice putting other people's stories together and then working with them, sending them the samples, and then they send me back something. And then I go back and forth until it's perfect. And so I've been able to really hone my own books by working on other people's. And that's why it was easy for me to just sit down and say, The Last Nazi by Jeff Putnam. And bam, dive right into it because I got a wild hair up my butt watching Indiana Jones on a marathon. But most of what I've ghost written has been nonfiction. and it was just something to pay the bills. One, I'm good at it, but two, there was kind of this whole phase with people wanting books written because they thought they were all going to be the next Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad, right? They were like, oh, I built this company that makes cup holders, and I built it up into whatever, and so I have to make this guy sound like he's this blazing uh entrepreneur, and so that he can have a 300-page business card to hand out to people and get invited to go speak at entrepreneurship conferences or whatever.
Elon Musk
That
2.0,
was
right?
that Yeah, right. That's most of what I wrote as a ghostwriter. But I've done some true crimes. I think the greatest one was I was working with this detective who, after he retired from law enforcement, he became just a cold case guy that was kind of like a freelance investigator that they could hire. And he solved a cold case that had been going on since 1972.
The two
And
girls
so,
from college.
no, it was
Oh,
a young girl, Debbie Randall,
oh,
um, down outside of Macon, Georgia, in Cobb County. But I had to literally send a FOIA request to Cobb County and get all of the old brutal case files and photos and all of the information of the things that had been perpetrated against this young girl. And that was a hard one to write because you're trying to, I mean, if you've ever watched a true crime documentary and you're like, I don't see how these people deal with this every day, and now you're reading all these brutal, horrible things,
mm,
and you have to turn that into a narrative for a book, you know, I've done a lot of that too. But the transition to just writing fiction has been pretty easy, mainly because I'm a movie guy, I'm a TV series guy. And so when I'm writing, I'm picturing it like I'm watching the episodes or the film.
sure.
And
Have you ever written a
oh,
screenplay or a series like Game of
I've
Thrones?
written I've written three screenplays.
Yeah.
One of
Okay.
them did really well. You've probably seen the movie, but I have an NDA, so I can't say it.
Oh, okay.
You've
Well,
probably seen the movie,
here
but I
I'll
have an
quote.
NDA.
Okay. All right. Well, that's a big tease now. I'll have to go Google it. You quote Hemingway's advice. We talked about Hemingway a second ago. Write one true statement. How does that principle guide your writing, and what's your process for getting unstuck when you're facing the blank page like he did?
Well, it goes back to what I was saying, where you quoted me about, Mary Sue's. There's not one true statement in the evolution of a Mary Sue. There's not. Nothing. Would that really happen? Is he really going to jump from this building and grab a hold of this, you know, curtain and swing to the next balcony? No. He's going to slam into the wall. He's going to fall down. He's going to shatter his ankle and he's going to have to limp away. And that's why Cole Harper is so relatable because he's average. He's not, he's not a elite anything. He just really doesn't want to die.
Yeah. He's like the accidental
And
tourist, but he's the accidental adventurer.
yeah, pretty much. He really doesn't want to die. And he doesn't like bullies, mainly because he's cocky
And a man.
and he gets in over his head and he gets beat up
Like
a
Gary
lot.
Cooper. He's just like Gary Cooper. I don't want to do the sheriff job. I'm gonna die, but I'm gonna do the right thing along the way.
Yeah. I mean, he's not quite Chuck Connors, but he's very right in there.
Chuck Connors.
he, he, yeah. He's not, an incredible marksman with that lever action, but he can shoot. He can fly a plane, even though his planes are usually stolen, and his gun has a limited round capacity. It's a 45. He's got 9 rounds in there. He better hope he can get everybody or he's got to keep running and fighting.
He'd make a great teammate on
Uh,
the Expendables, I think, in my opinion, but it's,
yeah,
20,
probably.
40 years too late. You have a course called
But
Seven Secrets to Write Like a Pro. What's the number one mistake you see aspiring authors make, and what's your best advice for overcoming it?
gosh,
Besides
I
the
would
money,
say
which there
it's
is none.
world building and lore dumping is usually the one I see most. When I had students that I was helping, work on books and manuscripts, they would start off a book with the land was in a state of disrepair from centuries long wars and and they would just go on to telling it the entire political structure of the world that these people are living in. And that will lose you right away. The only one that could successfully do that was Tolkien. Right?
Yeah.
But if I want to build a world, you have to do it through the story. So if you've got a war-torn land, there's decades old war, and now you've got this very authoritarian, dystopian kind of government system set up. You let that slowly come out through your protagonist is walking down the street. He's noticing the old bullet holes in the buildings that still haven't been repaired. He can notice down this alley there are two city guards accepting bribes for people to get through a checkpoint. And that helps you build this is the kind of world it's in. Versus they sit down and say, so there's a corrupt politician and this is the kind of government they've set up and now people have to do this and da 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 da. And they try to build up the lore in the first 3 pages in a gigantic info dump. And then no one cares about the story.
Sort of like in the movie Dune, where they sent you home with a big old book with all that stuff because they weren't going to bother with it in the movie. You know, Frank Herbert did a pretty good job in the Dune books, but the movies, they're working on it.
Yeah. Imagine trying to explain the political system between Arrakis and everything else, and then want to be interested in the movie itself.
That's called Star Wars 3. Your Substack is called The Catholic Convert. How does your faith inform these storytellings? You said it doesn't really, but I can't. If you have a Substack titled to it, there must be in you somewhere. Tell us about the Substack.
Oh, the Substack is just something that I started right around the time I was converting to the Catholic Church, because I was in an RCIA class with about 65 other people. And being Catholic will cost you something, especially in the South. If you come from a Protestant background, Southern Baptist, whatever, those Catholics are evil. They eat babies and whatever kind of thing that they want to turn around. But you can lose people. I can't believe you're abandoning your faith to become Christian, but it was just something for thought when other converts are coming in. And obviously, I'm not a theologian. I don't know everything there is to know about Catholicism. I can't quote the magisterium or anything like that. But it was just something for me to write down things that I learned and things that I looked at differently now that I'm a Catholic. It was more of something just, hey, this is kind of like a live look into my journey.
Yeah.
And I've had people that I know personally. My wife has family, even though she grew up Catholic, they left the Catholic Church. And now they're kind of disdainful that we are in the Catholic Church. And I put all of that into something that maybe other people can relate to.
Your testimony. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean,
as you
like
learn
a
these
testimony
things, as it rolls out, because you're really good at what you've been doing prior, but now you're learning something new at this late stage of life. So you should.
And so if I look online, right, and if I look online on social media and I see people yelling and arguing and you Catholics don't believe this. Well, why are you people Catholic haters? And
yeah,
here's I have an opinion on those things, and so I just put it in a way that maybe other people can glean some insight to and go, yeah, I shouldn't be arguing with these morons online. It just makes me look bad.
Well, your perspective compared to, say, the Candace Owens or even the Tucker Carlson, I hate white nationalist one, is much more enlightening, let's just say, or enlightened. You founded Rugged Legacy Grooming Supply Company alongside your writing job. How did you view the relationship between being an author and being an entrepreneur? And do these ventures feed into each other?
Well, I wasn't an author at the time. That was the company that I sold back in 2022.
Okay.
And funny enough, I sold it to Jordan Peterson's former son-in-law.
Oh.
The one that Michaela Peterson just divorced a few years ago. I was working at a factory making seats for BMW. And I'm sitting on the shipping dock and I just said, I can't be here for another 20 years because I was having a conversation with two guys who were getting ready to retire after being at that factory for 20 years. I got to do something else. And so I called up a buddy of mine I went to high school with, and I was like, "Hey, I'm going to start a company. I don't know what yet, but you're going to be involved in some way or another because, he's a graphic designer. I might need your help with designs and logos and packaging, things like that." And at the time, I had a beard that was about down to here,
Uh-huh.
and I could never find products that worked and smelled good. And so I started Googling and working on my own recipes in my kitchen. And I would just carry my own stuff with me to work,
Beard
beard
wax.
balms and
Oh,
oils
beard
and
bombs.
beard
Yeah.
waxes and things like that. And I had a couple of people say, "Man, that smells really good. Where'd you buy that?" I'm like, "I made it. Can you make me some? I'll pay it for you. I'll pay you for it." And there's the business idea. And so beard balms, beard oils, mustache waxes, pomades, things like that is what Rugged Legacy Grooming made.
I'll be darned. I used to have a beard. I probably used it and didn't even realize. Well, that's fantastic. I'm glad I asked. So you wrote a book, and we're going to rush to the end here. The Perimeter with white hot intensity, quote unquote, similar to how Solzhenitsyn wrote the Gulag Archipelago. Can you talk about writing from a place of anger or strong emotion and when that approach works versus when it doesn't work? Your anger versus what the reader might want to read?
Oh, well, I would say your target audience really matters. You need to target it to people who are just as pissed off as you are.
So does that mean advertise on Fox News late at night, or how do you do it? It can't be everything to everybody,
Oh,
of course, but somebody's going to say, "Wait a
no,
minute,
but
he's not that
it
angry."
was something that it was a sequel to Empire Divided, uh, kind of an unofficial sequel. But Empire Divided
The companion.
was was mainly structured around this modern idea that tribalism is bad when it's absolutely not. It's our human nature. Even as Catholics, we're very tribal. We love our tribe of Catholics, right? You see it naturally forming in high schools with the nerds, the jocks, the freaks, the athletes. Welcome to the
Mhm.
Breakfast Club. All
This
those
is this is
things.
the antithesis to what we like to hear in politics. Our diversity is our strength, which I've never agreed with.
No, diversity is only good when it prevents incest, but a
Right.
diversity of ideas when you don't have anybody pulling in the same direction is not good at all.
A house
And that was the
divided will
premise.
fall, right?
Right. And that was the premise of Empire Divided because we live
Mm,
in an American empire. It's divided and we need some tribalism,
brilliant.
right? Because the tribes are always going to have an us and them. And that's just the natural way of things. And the perimeter was kind of solidifying that idea in the sense that you have to draw a line of boundaries around your tribe because there are two questions. And this is kind of antithetical to the Catholic viewpoint, so you have to be very careful. And there's a lot in those two books that I agreed with then that I disagree with now. And
Typical.
I can say, yes, I disagree with some of the things I said in my previous works because you grow up,
Yeah.
right? Or
It,
you evolve your thinking.
it wasn't carved in stone, as they say.
Right. It was written on paper and you don't have to read it and you can tear that page out. Um, it was more along the lines of just because something is bad for other people, can it still be good for you? I mean, as an American, something that's good for America isn't bad just because it negatively affects Iran or Israel or France or Germany or whoever or the Canadians up there. There are things that can be good simply because it's good for you and your tribe. But something that is bad for you doesn't mean it has to be bad for the other tribe
Right.
because they're looking at it the same way.
Yeah.
And it's just keeping people open to that idea.
The whole idea of DEI and inclusion versus meritocracy, which is the first job I ever had, what they literally had it on the wall. Meritocracy, I believe in that. That and where America has gone, not so good. Um, you mentioned that every single piece of writing you start turns into something else entirely. You are a quote unquote, this is going to sound familiar to folks who've been listening, accidental writer. just like he's an accidental tourist or accidental adventurer. Can you share a specific example of a project that took an unexpected direction?
Oh yeah. Um, every single book I've ever written, I've written it about halfway and then decided, well, I now know how it's going to end. So I have to delete the entire book. So I'll be 30,000 words into a book and I got to delete it and restart it. And I've done that with every single Cole Harper novel,
I'll be darned.
every single one. Because you start writing and all right, this is the flow, and yeah, that's not going to work. Let me take off 15,000 words and start back over from here because now I have an idea of where it's going to go, just so I don't forget it, put it on the whiteboard. But I don't think you can really plan a story. At least I can't. I've seen people say, let's storyboard this and see where it goes. It's always, I've storyboarded this and this is how it's going to go. And then they sit down and they start and they get to the middle. Well, how in the hell is it supposed to move to this side now? What's supposed to happen? Nothing that would happen to make this happen makes sense in the context of what's already happened. So now I have to delete everything that's already happened and make it fit. And that's what happens with everything I write.
I'll be darned. Well, I wanted to pin you down on that Hemingway thing, and I had to look it up. It was between 500 to 1,000 words a day only, but he had time on his hands because he was a beach bum and he, had all the money he needed. But you use
And he had a lot
Google.
of five-toed cats.
Yeah, yeah, and a shotgun, unfortunately. But you use Google Docs instead of fancy writing software like Scrivener or any of this other stuff. Why do you prefer that minimalist approach? And what does your writing environment look like? Do you still do the porch, or is it right behind us there with the whiteboard? Where do you hide away like a prayer closet to do this writing?
It's usually right here, but I've grown up. I've graduated from Google Docs and I now use Word.
Congratulations.
And the only reason I moved over to Word is Kristen McTiernan, who is a very good friend of mine. Um, you may have seen her on Fictional Influence, things like
Uh-huh,
that.
uh-huh.
Uh, I worked for her and still on occasion with her, with ghostwriting clients that hire her, and then they get to choose how many ghostwriters on her staff there are. I want him because he has experience in the style of book that I want, and it'll get assigned to me, and then I go back and forth with the client or whatever. But she's like, when you do these edits, they're all in Word because that's where I told the clients to send me everything in a Word doc. So I don't want you changing it back over to this. I need you to leave it in this. So I had to get really comfortable with it, and then it just became easier. But
Okay.
she
Well,
turned
hopefully
me
she
into a
doesn't teach you
Microsoft
about
Word.
Grammarly. That's going to change everything again. But
Oh no, if she's on the same page as I think she is, which pretty sure she is, Grammarly's a no-no.
no, no, good. So, last question. Looking back at your body of work from educational books about the Civil War to children's readers to Cole Harper action adventure, how do you define yourself as a writer? Is there a common thread that runs through all your work?
Not really. I know it's not the answer that most people would want. I just have, let me rephrase that. There is a line of thinking that has always kind of struck me. There are people who want to write and there are people who have to write. And I'm the latter. If I don't write, I feel like I'm missing something. Like I've even gotten into writing music. I have a piano right here on the other side of this desk, and I'll throw together, simple little four chord progressions because I'm not Beethoven or Chopin. I'm not in any way that talented, but I I love stories because we all tell each other stories and our lives are stories. And sometimes there are unspoken stories that need to be spoken. There are these what if questions. And sometimes we get to live vicariously through our characters, which I've done that with Cole plenty of times. I have a psychologist friend of mine who said that Cole is the materialization of my superego because we're very similar in our attitude and uh, sometimes questionable ethics, I should say. Uh, but no, I have to write. And I I'm so self-important in my own mind that sometimes I think things that are interesting absolutely must be interesting to everyone else. So I have to tell them about it. I'm that arrogant.
Hmm. Does the good guy always win? Even the flawed ones always win good triumph over evil? Or do you put ambiguity in there with sinners sometimes coming out ahead?
Well, that would be entirely contingent upon whether you consider Cole a classic good guy. Is he a good guy? Well, yeah, he doesn't like injustices. Does he see everything that modern people see as injustices as injustices? No, he probably thinks you're stupid. You know, I'm not represented in cartoons enough. Well, you're just an idiot. It's probably what Cole would say, right? But
There was an
he's
80s,
an
there was an 80 TV show called Golden Monkey. And that
I
version of
remember that
Indiana
one.
Jones was very much the drunken, I don't want to be here. My plane's always out of air, of fuel. Had you ever seen that? Is there an
I
influence
did.
here?
I did. I saw that.
Okay.
But no, it's there's good people, and then you have the, I guess, cut and dry black and white version of a good guy and a bad guy.
It's Han Solo,
Right. Look, it's Han Solo,
literal smuggler.
a literal smuggler who does not want to help the pretty girl, but he can't help it
She
because
loves
now
him. What are
he's
you gonna
getting
do?
shot at.
He knows.
Right.
Yeah.
Even if he's a scruffy looking nerf herder, he's now a target because he helped her one time. And so he has no point but to reluctantly go along
And they're not related brother
and
and
keep from
sister.
dying.
So yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And they're not related. So it worked in his favor.
Well, Jeff, I without blasters, I think Cole is an amazing character. I'm really glad that I got to meet you. I thank you for coming on this show. So please tell our listeners where they can find out all about you, buy your books, if you have social media, everything they can do to find out more.
Well, the easiest and really only place I'm active is on X. And it's very, very simple to find me. I'm the Jeff Putnam. That is my ad.
Not to be
I
confused
told
with
you I
a
was
Jeff
arrogant.
Putnam or the other Jeff
I
Putnam. You
told
are
you I was
the Jeff
arrogant.
Putnam.
I'm the Jeff Putnam.
Yes. Well, X is the arrogancy in technology. What else can you do? It's the only way they can find you. But thank you for sharing that. No Facebook, no Instagram, none of the other stuff.
I have a Facebook, but I mean, I use it very sparingly.
And your books
And
can be
sometimes
found
I just,
everywhere. Books are sold, Amazon, Barnes and Nobles.
right now, they're only on Amazon. I have
Okay.
exclusivity on Amazon. There's a link right there in my profile on X that you can go to. Click on it. It takes you to the author page. Uh, I was in the process of getting them moved over onto Amazon, I mean, onto Barnes and Noble, but I love Kindle Unlimited because people can read my books for free. And if I have it there digitally, I can't have it anywhere else digitally.
Right.
Um, and it makes it easier to just focus. Hey, everybody just go to Amazon, the Cole Harper Adventures. You'll see them all right there. And I don't have to say, well, you can check out Barnes and Nobles, you go to Second Charles, you go here, go to Amazon, and I don't know anybody who doesn't have an Amazon account.
One
So it's
QR
easy
code
enough.
is all you need. All right. Well, we'll definitely put it in the show notes. I really want to thank you again. Hang on, everybody. I will be right back.
Now I write songs about the heartland. My heartland's in Tennessee.
Thank you for coming back. Now, the Heartland Journal News. This was my Friday contribution. Chthonian, spelled Chthonian, crisis of the current moment. A summary of revisiting of J.D. Haltingan's August 2022 subway essay on the internalizing and cluster B Chthonian crisis of the current moment is worthwhile and noteworthy today. Developmental and evolutionary psychiatrist J.D. Haltingan argued that contemporary cultural turmoil, particularly in radical leftist activism, reflects a disproportionate prevalence of internalizing disorders, examples depression, anxiety, negative emotionality, combined with cluster B personality traits, narcissistic, borderline histrionic, He describes this as Chthonian crisis, evoking chaotic, underworld-like forces erupting in society. Haltigan contends that algorithmic societal media platforms, TikTok, X, Instagram, serve as powerful incubators for performative histrionics, emotional liability, and provocative effects. These environments reward performative resistance art, antagonistic, scornful, and derisive behaviors, fueling cancel culture that weaponizes fear, anxiety, and guilt without rational scrutiny. He cites psychological studies linking such traits to leftist political attitudes, nothing a stronger presence of virtuous or vulnerable narcissism on the main, noting, it's a lot easier to write it than read it, guys, noting a stronger presence of virtuous or vulnerable narcissism on the mainstream left compared to right-wing examples like Trump's more grandiose style. Examples include performative protests, like politicians staging arrests for media attention, escalatory confrontations, climate activists gluing themselves to art, and looting framed as entitlement. Haltigan's references Eric Kaufman's observations that very liberal individuals show higher rates of LGBT identification and mental illness, alongside papers on turbulent teen identities on TikTok. While the piece does not directly analyze progressive Christianity as a movement, no specific churches, pastors, denominations, or figures like those in mainstream Protestantism, liberation theology, or the emerging church are named, it draws quasi-religious parallels to the described pathology. Haltigan's highlights Martin Gurri's analysis of elite class flagrant behaviors, self-punitive, hypermoral displays with religious undertones, and echoes Christopher Lash's The Revolt of the Elites on cultural decadence among elites. Camille Paglia is involved directly through the idea that strong religion historically provides structural against nihilism. In comments and broader context, readers and Haltigan note the decline of organized religion contributes to this chaos. Without transcendent disciplines, meaning, or sacred boundaries, society fills the void with pseudo-religions, moralism, Marxist influence, rejection of structure, and impulsive grandiosity. One thread suggests the West needs reviewed dialogue between traditional theologians and spiritual but not religious individuals to counter nihilism and demonic challenges like Marxism infiltrating institutions, including the church and schools. Haltigan concludes this crisis is qualitatively distinct and risks national balkanization without thoughtful leadership to restore law, order, discipline, and sophisticated discourse. His essay frames modern progressivism activism not merely as politics, but as a macro-social mental health phenomenon with spiritual undertones, hyper-moral politics replacing traditional religious frameworks, leading to cultural fractionation and a loss of the sacred. This piece fits into Haltigan's broader critique of ideological capture in psychology and society, where emotional dysregulation masquerades as moral virtue in a post-religious landscape. Heady stuff, huh? This is what I think about for Heartland Journal. Subscribe and never miss a new issue, free to your inbox. That is it for this episode. Thank you, Jeff Putnam, for bringing back a good read. Kids can't read today, and they are missing out. As Jeff famously said, there is a difference between being a good man and being good at being a man. Being a good man has to do with ideas about morality, ethics, religion, and behaving productively within a given civilizational structure. Being good at being a man is about showing other men that you are the kind of guy they'd want on their team if shit hits the fan. Jeff Putnam, Empire Divided, a modern man's path to his tribe. Good advice. Too bad kids can't read it. Maybe on Audible they'll hear it and maybe they'll learn. This is a goodbye for now. I'm your host, Steve Abramowitz, editor-in-chief of HeartlandJournal.com. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and pass it around. We only grow with your help and still ad-free. And if you're a dad, you can read it to your kids. Peace in our time and glory to God. Thanks for listening.
It's a long way to Nashville from that Napa Valley vine. Put me on a road less traveled. Lord, now I know why. God knew I'd get there in His perfect time.
Heartland Journal Podcast is the media property of heartlandjournal.com, where you can find news stories, commentary, and content serving the heartland of America. Any views or opinions represented on the podcast are personal and belong solely to the creator and do not represent those of the people, institutions, or organizations that the creator may or may not be associated with in professional or personal capacity unless explicitly stated.
Now I write songs about the heartland. My heartland's in Tennessee. Now I write songs about the heartland. My heartland's in Tennessee.